Today, I'm going to tell you a story about neurodiversity. It's a personal story, it's a family story, and it's a surprising one. Why? Because those of you that are aware of the term neurodiversity may associate it with some new age language that's linked to a mental disability. First things first, neurodiversity is not a disability. In actual fact, it's a difference, and a difference that ought to be celebrated. For me, my mum, and many other incredible neurodivergent people across the world, neurodiversity is not a handicap. In actual fact, it's the gift that keeps on giving and has enabled us to see opportunities that are often hidden in plain sight. So today, I'm going to offer you my story, as well as my mother's story, on how neurodiversity enables phenomenal entrepreneurs. My mother's story begins in Plateau, the 12th largest state in Nigeria. Like me, when she was a child, she struggled with reading, writing, and spelling, and found school rather tiresome. Although she was able to complete school and do reasonably well for someone who was undiagnosed and dyslexic, she had other talents that her parents wanted to tap into. You see, her parents were progressive people, people beyond their time. In the Nigerian community and in the African community more widely, being neurodivergent isn't something that would be willingly accepted. But her parents decided to tap into her talents, and that talent is entrepreneurship. So my mother started her very first business at the age of 8. That business was a hot beverages business where she would provide smaller sized Lipton tea, Bonvita, and Milo. And if any of you have had the privilege of visiting Nigeria, you'll know that Milo is a much loved hot malted chocolate drink. Now, at the time when my mother was a child, you could only purchase these drinks in bulk. And it just so happens that her mother had a shop where these things could be purchased. So what did my mum do? She set up her own stall outside her mother's shop, where she would, at times, purchase the big products or just take them without asking. And she'd put them into little bags and she would sell them to other people in the community. You see, buying these products in bulk was often inaccessible, expensive, and hard to find. So my mum really hit the nail on the head with this business proposition. Her customers were students like herself, and she quickly became highly profitable. With those profits, she purchased machinery that enabled her to be able to take the products and make them look rather fancy. Soon, her customers became the parents of the students who were initially buying the products. And you guessed it, my grandmother lost customers. Talk about healthy competition. Now, you would think that my grandmother would be deeply upset with the fact that she's lost customers, but in fact, she was mighty proud of her daughter's ability to think outside of the box and solve a problem for so many. So my mother began to sell these products to people across Plateau. They would travel all the way to her stall to get small, affordable sachets to make hot beverages on the way to school. My mother was and still is a phenomenal neurodivergent entrepreneur. Now, how was she able to do this? My mother had two things. The first, very supportive parents who were able to see beyond her difference and celebrate it. And the second, the focus on her talent rather than her flaws. You see, where my mother is from, and I know that this is an issue across many parts of the third world, if your success does not come from academia, it's believed that you will not make it. It's believed that it will be difficult for you to have financial stability. It's believed that you will not be a success. But her parents didn't believe in that narrative. They believed in the power of her and the power of community. So I've spoken about neurodiversity quite a lot, and I've not actually told you what it is. It's a term that was coined in 1998, the year that I was born, so it's not that old. And it was coined by the Australian sociologist Judy Singer. All it means is that we all have different minds. We all think differently, we all see the world in different ways, and we have unique experiences that make us ourselves. Even if you are an identical twin, it is quite literally impossible for someone to have the same mind as you. And that's all neurodiversity is. It's not a scary term. I know in the workplace that people tend to shy away from it, don't want to deal with the issue, but it's something to be embraced. Now, there are a number of conditions that are linked specifically to neurodiversity. Those conditions include autism, ADHD, also known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and Tourette syndrome, and there is some overlap with mental health. I'm going to talk to you about dyslexia because that's the condition that both my mother and I have, and that's what allows us to be members of the rich and wonderful neurodivergent community. So what's dyslexia? Dyslexia is allegedly a learning difficulty. I don't like that term. I think that dyslexia is simply a learning difference. And yes, dyslexic people tend to struggle with reading, writing, and spelling, but there is so much more to it. And I know that for dyslexic people that are in the room today and watching this video, you will know that dyslexia goes beyond how you write, how you read, and how you spell. So what's my experience been of it? Let's talk about time management and organization. Where do I begin? I've been to university not once, but twice. And you would think that having gone 2 times, I would submit assignments on time. Sadly, that was not the case. Both my dissertations were submitted after the initial deadline. The first dissertation, a few days. I didn't learn from that lesson. The next dissertation, a few weeks. This then fast-forwarded into my own book. My first published book was handed in 6 months after the publication date. I wish this was made up, but I just simply couldn't stick to that deadline, and it gave me crippling anxiety. This TEDxWinchester talk, please have a chat with Jan afterwards. I think at some point she thought she's not getting anything at all. I really struggled again to get my fingers to the keyboard and submit something, at the very least, submit something, forget about on time. But that's something that I have experienced as a dyslexic person. Another challenge, directional dyslexia. I cannot tell you my left from my right, which makes looking at letters like P, D, and B, and I really hope I got that right, very, very difficult. It also means I can't read a map. And if we talk about driving, well, it's been 6 or 7 years since I started learning how to drive. And we live in a country, the UK, where we drive on the left. And for many lessons, I was convinced we drive on the right. I promise I'm a safe driver now. And although my driving instructor has not gotten back to me after 4 years since our last lesson, my mother willingly took on that role. And I can safely say that I'll soon be taking my driving test, although I know she still says prayers of safety when I'm behind the wheel. Putting all jokes aside, dyslexia has penetrated and affected many aspects of my life, leaving me with anxiety that's led to IBS, way too much information, but at times not being able to hold down food, not even water, something that plays on the back of my mind. But dyslexia is not all doom and gloom. It's left me with 2 wonderful gifts. The first is public speaking. Now, I think I'm doing fairly well in this TEDx talk. But this is something that I started from a young age, and my ability to orate clearly and concisely meant it was actually a challenge for people to spot my dyslexia. I mention this because everybody's dyslexia is different. No one's dyslexia is the same. Everyone's neurodivergence is different. No one's neurodivergence is the same, and it should all be celebrated. I know you all think I'm wearing a Harry Potter uniform. It is not. It was my school uniform, and I willingly wore it for 7 years. Dyslexia also gave me the gift of entrepreneurship. This is me at the age of 12, and this is my entrepreneurial story. I had the privilege of leaving a rather underserved community to go to a phenomenal school in West Sussex. The incredible first-class education I had on scholarship allowed me and empowered me to believe in giving back to others through business. So I started a tutoring business in my parents' living room in North London. I focused on accessible price points because I think it's really important that we give people the access to opportunity using education as a tool. I had one student, and I went from 1 to 2. I realized I can make some more money having people in groups and making it more affordable. I went from 2 to 10, and by the time I was 18 and just about to start university, I had a rolling set of 50 students coming in and out of my parents' living room every Saturday. When I was at university, I then hired my friends, and they tutored for me across London, and I had some foresight, that's the dyslexia again, and some forward thinking, and decided to take the business online. This was pre-pandemic, so well before we all knew about online education. This enabled me to serve globally as well as locally. And today, I run a tuition center in North London, and I also run my business online. I provide this business to help people access extra education at a cost that is affordable to them. I didn't stop there. At the age of 23, I got itchy neurodivergent feet and decided to start business number 2. I promised Mum I'm not doing any more, for now. I say that, but who knows? This business is a neurodiversity consultancy where I teach some of the biggest brands and organizations how to create safe spaces for their neurodivergent employees. I also go into schools and empower and uplift young people like myself who struggled at school to embrace, accept, and celebrate their neurodivergence. So how does neurodiversity enable phenomenal entrepreneurs? It enables them through community, and I'd like to introduce you to the core of my community, my mother, Tochi Udokporo, and my father, Innocent Udokporo. Earlier on, I mentioned the power of the support of parents and the power of tapping into talent. Okay, I can't read, write, or spell very well, although I am a published author at 24, so you can do anything you put your mind to. But putting that aside, this community, this core community, pushed me to believe in myself and pushed me to know that I can be a phenomenal entrepreneur. And I want to empower all of you to be that community for somebody else. You see, I have had the great privilege of phenomenal parents, and I know that some people cannot have that. Guess what? Community starts with you. Reimagine a world where you serve others and empower others to be the very best version of themselves. And to my mother and to my father, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for accepting me, for empowering me, for uplifting me, and for making me believe that I can be a phenomenal entrepreneur. Where they are from, where many people are from, being neurodivergent is not something that is often celebrated, but they celebrated me. And now it's time for you to celebrate neurodiversity too. Thank you.